Hello and a very warm welcome to Bharata. First, you're watching Big Picture with Frank Rosen Pereira. US Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin over the weekend termed India to be a great partner. He also stated that the two countries are promoting peace and stability in the region and providing for a free and open Indo-Pacific. At a press conference in New Delhi, the visiting dignitary said, "We consider India to be a great partner, and I think we have done a number of things to work well together. There's just a lot of opportunity there to strengthen that partnership and to do some things, additional things to make sure that we are promoting peace and stability in the region and providing for a free and open Indo-Pacific region as well." Contentious issues like that of human rights and minorities were raised by Austin during his visit. The focus was well and truly China, and Washington is looking towards India for a counterbalance. In this edition of Big Picture, we will analyze the elevating US-India partnership. Joining me on the program today are Prabhu Dayal, former ambassador, Major General Ashwini Sivach, retired strategic analyst, and Professor Sriram Chaulia, foreign affairs analyst. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of Big Picture. Ambassador, let me begin the program with you first. Let's talk about the key takeaways really as far as the US Defense Secretary's visit to India was concerned.
Well, Frank, first of all, thank you for having me on your show. For me, there are two important points. Firstly, that the visit was strengthening the strategic partnership between India and the United States. And it took place at the same time that the United States was having that sparring match with China in Anchorage in Alaska. So, while on the one hand, tensions between the United States and China don't seem to be coming down, on the other hand, the closeness between India and the United States seems to be increasing and the strategic partnership is growing. Secondly, of course, the United States has a big interest in the defense purchase market of India because India is in the process of modernizing its armed forces. The United States is already on the way to sell us the MQ-9 Reaper drones. I understand 30 of them are in the pipeline. The final agreement is just in the last stages. There are other sorts of supplies that the United States could make to India. And with four of the major agreements that are signed already in place, I think that the way has been paved for India and the United States to open up a closer relationship in the area of defense procurement. Having said that, there were two irritants also. The first related to the issue of human rights and the rights of minorities, because the chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, Senator Bob Menendez, had written a letter to Mr. Lloyd Austin, the Defense Secretary of the US, asking him to take up the issues relating to democracy and human rights with the Indian government. And I think the Defense Secretary did so, though not in the manner in which probably Bob Menendez would have expected him to. And the second issue, which certainly does need to be flagged, is that there are still some issues relating to defense supplies from Russia. And I think Bob Menendez had mentioned that India should be warned that there could be the catch-up sanctions on way. And I think Lloyd Austin did so. So there are these two irritants. Firstly, the issue of how the US will approach the issue of human rights in India, and the other, how the CATSA issue will be looked at, because that doesn't seem to die away. Lloyd Austin tried to say that India has not yet acquired the missile systems from Russia, so the question of the sanctions kicking in doesn't arise. But then the S-400 missile system is very much on its way. And the issue that will have to be looked at will be, how do we ensure that the US doesn't impose sanctions on us? So, to me, these were the major takeaways from the visit.
Absolutely. Let's take forward this particular issue, General. This issue of the S-400 Katsa, as well as where do Indian and US defense ties stand?
Yeah, Frank. See, first of all, we must understand that India was purchasing almost 60 to 70% of its defense equipment from Russia. And over a period of time, in last about 15 years, you find that the US, from where we were only purchasing almost about 2 to 5%, has now increased to almost 20%. And we have purchased a major equipment in last about 5 years. And these are basically C-17 Globemaster, then C-13J Hercules, Chinook heli-lift aircraft. Then we have also taken Apache attack Hepter. Now, these were the game changer as far as the Air Force is concerned, and they have given us edge over even the Chinese Air Force, because the induction of the troops which had taken place in Ladakh was kind courtesy these aircraft. And this was so swift and fast that it surprised not only Chinese but to even our own self and the Indians. Now, the second issue which is there is that we have taken M777, which is ultra light howitzer, which is also a game changer in Ladakh, because they can be lifted by Chinook helicopter and moved from one valley to another. And the other issue, main thing is that America was not ready to actually give us the technology, which was the main hurdle. They were only ready to sell the item. But of late, when we signed the 4 basic foundation agreement, on which that Limur Logistic Exchange and Memorandum of Agreement, then COMCASA Communication Compatibility and Security Agreement, and then last we have taken a BECA, that is Basic Exchange and Cooperation Agreement. That has opened a way for it that a technology transfer can take place. We have become a strategic partner, not the strategic alliance, but strategic partner. We understand each other better. Our naval facility can be utilized by each other. We can get the real-time information from America satellite and their radar, and America is today ready to give us the latest technology. And second thing, transfer of technology and joint venture. Now, this is the game changer. Now, remember the M777 which we have purchased from US, this has got a clause transfer of technology. It is now being made by Mahindra Defense. So overall, what is happening is that we are now ready to purchase more weapon and equipment from US, because they are giving you one, the latest equipment, second, transfer of technology, which was not being done earlier. And this whole agreement has made a tremendous impact. The another thing is, what is in the pipeline when Lloyd Austin has come is 3-4 things. One was that we are now purchasing the 30 Predators. These are the latest, Predators are basically the drones which are armed. We do not have armed drones so far. The US is ready to give us the latest one on $3 billion, 30, that is 10 each for Army, Air Force, Navy. We are also trying to purchase medium multi-combat aircraft, almost 114. The deal has still not been signed, but this is on pipeline. P-8I, which we are also buying, another 6 of them. Earlier, we have bought almost 20 of them, basically for surveillance and anti-submarine for Indo-Pacific, because we have a threat of the Chinese looming very large in Indo-Pacific. So all these things are happening. Now, as far as S-400 is concerned, we have gone for it for 2 reasons. This is the latest air defense system which is available in the world. And this is the best available. And that's why India has to first see its national security. And that's why we have gone for Russian, this thing. Chinese have bought it. Turkey has bought it. The Chinese, when they bought it, and Turkey, the sanction has been already put under CARSA by the US. We have already paid about $800 million. And the total cost of these 5 units are $5.4 billion. Now, the issue is that the America was ready to give us some alternative, that is third that is terminally high altitude area defense system along with the Patriot missile, with their utilizing South Korea, Taiwan and Saudi Arabia. But that was no match to S-400. So India has very cleverly told two, three things, that overnight we cannot be switching off complete weapon equipment from Russia to US. It will take time. Second thing is we have to also see our defense and our security from Chinese and Pakistan side. And today S-400 is the ideal weapon system available. So we have to go for it. Other weapon system is not matching. And we have also conveyed to the US that you can't put sanctions on your strategic partners. You have to be practical on this issue. I think this is my take. Over a period of time, the US will realize it. They don't want to openly declare it, but I don't think they will put cards up, because we have also ready to agree on them on Chabar port. They have put certain restriction on importing oil from Chabar. Our import has reduced to zero. And they have said, okay, on Chabar we will not put any Katsa. You can go ahead and develop that, because we told the Americans the importance of Chabar, because if you have to bypass Pakistan to go to Afghanistan and Central Asian state, because it is called gateway to Central Asian state and also connected to North-South corridor. So they have agreed. So my point is, Frank, I will say this visit is a historical visit. It has now made this strategic partner come much more closer than what they were.
Okay, all right. Shreyam Cholia, let me bring you in now. You know, you've been patiently listening to the other two panelists as well. Let me bring in another aspect into the discussion so that we take that forward as well. There are so many dimensions to the India-US relationship. Let's bring in Quad now for for a moment. The first Quad leadership summit took place recently at the behest of the United States and the United States President Joe Biden, and now immediately following that we have this visit of Lloyd Austin to India. What does this all signify?
Yeah, so I think it signifies strategic commitment or a recommitment by the US, because under Trump administration, even though they had strong bilateral defense and other relations with some key allies, it was all disjointed. And many people worried in Indo-Pacific whether the US will actually come to their rescue or will support them in the event of war with China. So now I think what is happening is a kind of a reassurance. That's what they're doing. And Lloyd Austin, in fact, he emphasized the fact when he was in India, strong commitment to India. And then he's just coming from he was coming from South Korea and Japan, which are of course treaty allies of the US. They're also the same message, commitment. So I think what they're trying to show is that the US will not abandon these countries, and that they should realize that the US is not going to vacate or leave the whole Indo-Pacific for the Chinese to devour. So that I think is what, and in fact, Lloyd Austin, when he was meeting Rajnath Singh and the joint statement, it was quite clear. Everything was to emphasize that we want to rebuild the US alliance system. And in a way, with the four foundational defense agreements General Sivach was mentioning, we are like almost like now becoming like a de facto ally, although we may not call it that. So we are all major defense partner. All these designations, comprehensive global strategic partnership. So if you read into all these diplomatics and you add it up, it is a kind of like almost like a de facto alliance, and it's going in the direction the Chinese have pushed it in the direction through their aggressive actions. So I think that is the main thing that caught my attention. The other was, yeah, and as Ambassador Dayal was mentioning, with the Chinese the tensions are very high, and in fact Jake Sullivan, the US National Security Advisor, directly confronted the Chinese in full glare of media. And one of the things that has come out is that they said that the concerns we are expressing about Chinese conduct, aggression, expansion, totalitarian behavior, crushing human rights of minority, all these, he says, these are not just the concerns of American people or of the US government, but we are carrying these concerns from around the world, especially our partners and allies with whom we have been conferring. So what they were trying to project was kind of a US that is now playing this multilateral game, and will bring in the interests of the partners and of the allies, and use that also in the negotiation with the Chinese. In other words, what they're saying is we are not going to simply do a bilateral. This is not just between US and China, but it's about our allies and partners in the Indo-Pacific who are directly being impacted by Chinese actions. So I think we'll see more and more of that. And that's where, of course, the Quad comes in, and Quad Plus. General Austin was mentioning that India is taking the lead in connecting with other like-minded countries in the region, and he said we appreciate that very much. So they are looking for India as a kind of a stable pillar for this, whether you want to call it a new Cold War or containment, or if those are 20th century words, then we may invent a new term. But the point is, it is quite bad, the China-US relationship, and that is where I think they see higher and higher salience for India. And
Sure.
the Quad will be built upon, primarily the two main legs will be US and India going forward. Japan and Australia, of course, will come along, but in terms of the geography, in terms of the military capabilities, and in terms of the ability to influence other countries in the region, India and the US will have to do most of the heavy lifting. And I think we are ready for it. And increasingly, we'll go toward the Quad Plus to try and expand this informal network and bring in a few more countries, which will make this really solid coalition to roll back or contain or push back the Chinese.
Absolutely. All right. So, Ambassador, since we are here now, even you brought up the issue of China, and the professor also is speaking about that particular aspect. So, is China really what is bringing the United States and India closer together, or is there a real sense of convergence other than China as well?
Well, first and foremost, it may be noted that the new US administration, the Biden administration, has sent many clear signals that it will seek to strengthen Indo US relations. Now, as regards China, certainly it is acting as a catalyst in bringing India and the United States closer together. Because there is no secret about the fact that China's territorial aggressiveness and its economic expansionism are a source of concern, not just to the United States and India, but to a lot of other countries, including the two other Quad members, Japan and Australia. And while Professor Srilam Cholia mentioned that India and the United States will play a pivotal role in regard to the Quad, but we cannot ignore the fact that Japan and Australia will also have to play a very important role in bringing together a lot of other diverse nations, because I don't think that the Quad will continue to be just confined to these four countries. As it is, the Quad has changed from being a security dialogue. It was termed the Quadrilateral Security Dialogue, and it has now become the Quadrilateral Framework, a framework for action, where a lot of things are being done. For instance, there is this proposal to manufacture COVID vaccines in India, and the other countries are going to be investing in this venture. And the question of making connectivity easier, again, is something that the other two countries will have to play a major role in. However, as the professor mentioned, India and the United States will have to play a pivotal role. Now, as regards India, we face the most immediate and the most serious danger from China, because we are facing Chinese aggressiveness across the line of actual control. The standoff with China continues unabated. And I think the other Quad countries are cognizant of this fact. And if the United States feels that this relationship of hostility which China is imposing on India is a factor which can help it to promote its defense relationship with India, or rather its defense production relationship, defense procurement relationship, then why not? So there is no denying the fact that while on the one hand we will see a strengthening of the Quad and maybe also its expansion to other democratic countries, but at the same time we will also see a deepening of Indo-US military ties, and by that I mean ties relating to the procurement of defense equipment by India from the United States. I don't mean that the United States will intervene directly with China. This problem with China will have to be sorted out by us, by ourselves, and we are doing it. But if we have friends who can help us in one way or another, then there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. However, we come back to the question of Katsa because there is a lot of Russian weaponry here. And the US military thinkers feel that if the S-400 missile systems are deployed here, then they could gather some intelligence in regard to the F-35 fighter planes. I've come across this in the American media. Now, there is a hue and cry on this issue because will the sword of Katsa be kept dangling on our heads? Because Katsa is imposed by the US Congress. And if people like Senator Menendez, who heads the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, are going to keep speaking about the fact that India's acquisition of the S-400 missile system would automatically attract Katsa, then I think we need to sort this out one way or the other. Because we are going to go ahead with purchasing S-400. We want to deepen our military ties with the United States in terms of procuring US weaponry to the extent possible. We are signing for purchasing some equipment in the very near future. I understand the MQ9 Reaper drones are just about to be in the pipeline. But why should then, on one hand, we be considered an ally, on the other hand, this threat of being sanctioned still remain? This matter has to be sorted out by the US administration because there will be otherwise an unnecessary amount of uncertainty which will be injected into this relationship. I don't think uncertainty is good for any bilateral relationship.
Certainly, uncertainty is not good for any bilateral relationship, and we don't want to see that. What we want to see is the ties reaching new heights and being taken to the next level. General, let's talk about another aspect and bring in our western border as well. And what is the US's interest there? Can we expect some kind of cooperation really as far as India and the United States is concerned in Afghanistan? What is US's policy as far as Pakistan is concerned? All these things also matter to us, don't they?
Absolutely correct, Frank. But just to add what has been told about the Quad, which becomes a central stage in the complete talk, that the India plays a major central role because India falls in the center of this Indo-Pacific. On to the east is Australia, on to the west is South Africa. And we are holding a place strategically so important where the 70% of the trade goes, whether it is oil or whether it is a cargo ship or whether it is another trade ship. So there we have a very important role. And these four countries which are joining India, US, China, and Australia, we have also conducted a Malabar exercise. So Quad is trying to now inching toward formalization and thereafter militarization. This bound to happen. Then only this Quad will be a force to reckon with. You can't be believing in rhetoric. You have to produce result which can counter China in Indo-Pacific. At any point of time, there are 7 to 8 submarines and 2 to 3 frigates and other ships of China which are present in this Indo-Pacific and threatening the peace and tranquility. If you have to counter it, all these four countries have to get together. Remember, three principles which has been told that if you want Indo-Pacific to be free, open, and inclusive, then it has three guiding principles: freedom of navigation, rule-based international order, maintaining territorial integrity and sovereignty of all nations, including island nations. The reason for this is because the China expansionism is threatening this. Assertiveness and aggressiveness of China is threatening the peace and tranquility in Indo-Pacific. And that's why this four countries will play a major role. Quad plus, but it will inch toward militarization, military alliance, and that's how this exercise are being held at Malabar, where four navies have got together and conducted exercise both in Arabian Sea and also Bay of Bengal, very close to Pakistan border, and telling a very state message to China that we mean business. Now, as far as Pakistan is concerned, remember, it is a catch-22 situation for America also. They need Pakistan for exit from Afghanistan. It can't be a one-way traffic. So they have to play on a game wherein they keep Pakistan also in check. At the same time, Pakistan to remain relevant for them. Pakistan is a frontline state for finding a solution in Afghanistan. It goes without saying. It also is very important what US has realized it. India also play a very important role if in case a solution has to be found out in Afghanistan. That has been very assertively stated by Biden administration, and hence we have now become a member of the group which is having a discussion on finding out a solution in Afghanistan, especially on ceasefire, and also that the territory of Afghanistan not to be utilized by the international terrorists. So therefore, India importance is increasing in Afghanistan, which US wants it. In fact, Russia and China are against it. So is Pakistan. Pakistan do not want India to be partner in finding any solution in Afghanistan. They feel that if India is a partner or India is a strategic alliance, then it is a part of a problem, not a part of solution. And that is what Pakistan is trying to do. But US has made it very clear that India will play a major role. But my only take is that Pakistan will also be very important for Biden administration. I don't think the way Donald Trump has gone against Pakistan, that it has stopped military aid. It also said that $30 billion which was given to Pakistan has siphoned back to Taliban, which is fighting against US. I think they will change this course, but at the same time they will maintain very good relation with India. My only take is that India has very categorically told US that Chabar port is very important for not only for India, even for US. If you have to bypass Pakistan and go to Afghanistan, which is very important for US also and Central Asian state, and hence the Chabar port should not attract any Katsa, and US should make an environment is conducive. Now, anyone and everyone say that Chabar port was never put under Katsa because US has given that clearance. But no, the issue was since there was a threat of Katsa, no bank, no investment was coming in Chabar. So this has to be made clear by US. India has agreed all other demands of US, including reducing the oil import almost zero. China did not do that. So therefore, I am sure we are strategic alliance with the US. US will understand our red lines also, will abide by certain things, and by the way the things are moving in a correct direction, both India and US are agreeing and now sort of appreciating each other, red lines as well as the plus and minus, and they will act for the betterment of complete humanity.
Sure. All right. Sriram Chaulya, let me go back to a point that the ambassador was making in his opening remark about the irritants now. And, let's talk about those and try and address them. Of course, one is the minorities, one is the human rights, and then we have the Katsa issue as well, which the Congress will have to decide at some point. So, are these irritants at some point in time going to bring about a roadblock or a stumbling block between the ties between the two countries?
Yeah, Frank, I think my own view is that while these irritants remain, they will not they will not upset the apple cart because the clear and present threat of China is so massive that the United States will not be being smart diplomatically or in terms of realpolitik if it aggravates relationships with allies and strategic partners. So I think now the Biden, unlike Trump administration, is going to be a lot softer on partners and allies, and they will be less demanding. In fact, they have already settled with Japan and South Korea about the basing and how much the host country should pay and all those things, which Trump had made a big issue with those, as a bargaining thing with each of those allies. So I think they will not really push us too hard on this. And to an extent, our news media also, they highlight these issues a lot, simply to show that that we should be tough. And of course we are tough. Even with a close partner like the US, we are not going to just roll over just because they are demanding that we stop Russian arms purchases or Iranian oil purchases. So I think the larger grand strategy is counterbalancing China. So that for that reason, I think they will not. It will be like hacking at their own feet if they go ahead and impose sanctions on India. I mean, that's just unthinkable. The last time there was sanctions on India from the US was after Vajpayee government conducted nuclear tests more than 20 years ago, 22 years ago. And in fact, they realized very quickly, Bill Clinton administration by 2000 itself, within a year or two, they realized very quickly that that was a strategic mistake, and they reversed it and they ended the sanctions. And now, and at that time, remember, China was nowhere close to being what General Lloyd Austin calls a pacing power, which could challenge and overtake the US. Right now, it is. 20 years have passed since that era, so they cannot afford to anger India, and I don't think that they will go that far. At least not this administration, because they believe in bringing back that strategic generosity towards the allies and partners which Trump had
Mhm.
abandoned. So in that sense, I think we are okay. But we'll navigate it as it comes. Meanwhile, I think we should focus on the areas of cooperation, especially the ones General Siwach was mentioning, the joint military interoperability and all these things which General Austin was also mentioning on his India trip, and those are going to be very critical. I think last year during the LAC height peak of the LAC crisis, Indian Navy actually conducted very important maneuvers both in the Arabian Sea and in the Bay of Bengal to shoo away the PLA Navy.
Sure.
And so that they cannot hem us in and cannot apply pressure on our flanks, alongside what was happening on the northern border in the Himalayas. And
Mm.
there, I think the more and more coordination with the US now. I heard from a retired naval officer that most of our offensive capabilities now in the Navy are more and more in sync with the US technology and US provided platforms. So I think it's quite clear that lies the real containment, because the Chinese, we can stop them, we can even repel them at LAC, but in the high seas, it's not a sovereign territory of anybody. It's a first come first serve. Whoever comes and
Sure.
grabs and tries and dominates that area, they can start saying that now it is our sphere of influence, because it's not a sovereign territory in the waters.
Mm.
So that is where the real tussle is with China in the longer term tussle, medium to longer term. And I think US India naval cooperation will be a very, very significant element. And we should be, I think, emphasizing more of that and doing more this jointness,
Mm.
Quad plus, but especially US Navy and US Pacific Command is very important. In fact, Rajnath Singh ji mentioned we are going to cooperate with the US Pacific Command, with the US CENTCOM, all these things,
Right.
which means that this is a broader global partnership. And I think that's where it will yield a significant strategic impact. If it's only bilateral, then it's an ordinary relationship, but it's not bilateral. When we say it's a strategic, it means when US and India combine, it impacts the whole region and
Mm.
the balance of power in the whole region. So I think that's the way forward.
Okay. Time now to get quick closing comments from all my panelists with the best way forward, starting first with you, Ambassador.
Frank, I wish that Professor Sriram Cholia is correct and that the United States does not impose CATSA sanctions. However, let me tell you where the problem lies. The problem is that it is an act of Congress combating America's adversaries through Sanctions Act. And an act of Congress automatically kicks steps in when the circumstances so warrant. The administration of Joe Biden cannot wish away CATSA sanctions kicking in. However, they can persuade Congress to give a waiver. It will be up to us to exert enough influence on the Biden administration so that it grants a waiver. Nonetheless, this issue of CATSA is not going to be wished away. It is going to be there on the horizon. I'm afraid it will keep on lurking like the sword of Damocles. But I hope, like the professor said, that good sense prevails on the Biden administration and that nothing is done which erodes the good work that has been put in all these last few years, and that the relationship stays on course.
Right. General?
Frank, the issue is two, three things stands out. India and US are now strategic partner. Our relationship are growing from strength to strength. Now it should build up at a strategic level. We should, two, three things should happen. One is our bilateral exercise, whether it is Navy or Army or Air Force. And second thing is joint venture. The requirement of day is transfer of technology and manufacture of this thing within India itself. The FDI in defense has already increased from 49% to 74. I'm sure US is going to make it. India believes in Atmanirbhar and Make in India. And now this is a correct platform wherein India and US can jointly manufacture the latest weapon and equipment on transfer of technology. I think that will be the way forward. One. Second thing is, as far as US is concerned, it has to play an active role and putting pressure on even in Pakistan. You know, the point is, as far as China is concerned, one is very clear that China assertiveness and aggressive attitude is being challenged now by all the four countries of the Quad, which is very much clear. Where does Pakistan fit in? The Pakistan is already under a financial crisis. There are chances of that it is maybe downgraded by financial action task from grey to black in June. So US must put pressure on Pakistan to stop this cross-border terrorism. That is where the importance of US will be there. I'm sure the US will try that because till the cross-border terrorism do not stop and they do not stop aiding and abetting the terrorists called Lashkar-e-Toba Jaish-e-Mohammed, the relation between India and Pakistan are unlikely to improve. We may say it on paper that there will be a ceasefire, but till they stop this, the things are not going to improve. I'm sure the US has got the key to the problem and US can put a tremendous pressure. As far as other issues are concerned, I think we are moving in a correct direction. Our strategic partnership is growing from strength to strength, and the Quad will be a main factor in time to come. It will be Quad, Quad Plus, and from, you can say, from non-formalization to formalization and the militarization is the way things are looking, that in future we will counter China by all four of us coming together and challenging its aggressive and assertive attitude.
And close the show for us with your concluding remarks, Sriram Chaulia.
Well, Frank, the thing is that the strategic clarity has emerged now. There was a time when both the US and India were hedging vis-a-vis China, and we believed that we could have relationship based on competition come cooperation with China. And for that reason, we were holding back a lot of punches and trying to be cautious with the Chinese. That era is over now, and there's only one person to blame for it, which is Xi Jinping. And the way he has tried to capitalize on the pandemic and press the territorial claims, that has really ended that era of ambiguity. So now there is clarity, and I think that's the basis on which US-India partnership is now getting stronger. And in a sense, this is the one big relationship, as Rajnath Singh ji was mentioning, PM Modi has been talking about it, previous US presidents have said it, I'm sure Biden will also say it now, that this is the defining partnership of which will shape the 21st century. So we have to treat it with a great deal of love and affection. And at the same time, of course, we have to be hard-headed where required, to make sure that the red lines are clearly understood by the US. So I think it's a very mature partnership based on this strategic clarity. And going forward, we will be able to achieve a lot more in terms of this, what Dr. Jaishankar calls rebalancing in the region.
Sure.
For that, India and US are the main drivers.
Okay, all right. On that note, then I'll call it a wrap on this edition of Big Picture. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. What's coming out of this discussion is tensions are not coming down between the US and China, and that is catalyzing the US's relationship with India. There are irritants like issues of human rights, minorities, and CAATSA, but the areas of convergence far outweigh the negatives. With Washington's prevailing situation with regards to Beijing, those irritants are likely to stay away between New Delhi and Washington, D.C. The focus of the two nations is clearly the Indo-Pacific, and that's where we are going to see the highest cooperation, and the Quad will play a much bigger role. India is a strategic partner, and the US wants us to play a much significant role in Afghanistan, but that's where the US needs Pakistan as well, and that's a ground reality that we have to live with. That's it from me. This is Frank Rausen Pereira signing off. But before I leave, let me remind you to like and subscribe to Bharata First on YouTube and follow us on social media as well. And remember to please spread the word.